A very good morning to everybody. In this video, we'll be discussing the article discussion of the Hindu editorial page. Today is 11th June 2020. There are 4 articles which focus upon the migrant labours and the G7 summit. The other is regarding the sports sector. Before I begin, I am Prashanth. I welcome you all to Educational Stuff. The first article is regarding the G7 summit. Before we get into this is a cartoon of the day. How New Zealand has dealt with the coronavirus with strict measures and it is set free from the coronavirus. Now New Zealand has 0 cases. You can see the video which I discussed in the previous discussions, the detailed video how New Zealand and 8 other countries are corona free. Every country need to be understanding from that perspective and take the measures to curb this coronavirus pandemic. This is the first article which says regarding the G7 summit. The next G7 summit tentatively scheduled in Washington DC in mid-June had been postponed by the host, US President Donald Trump. His decision followed German Chancellor Angela Merkel's decision to stay away from the meeting ostensibly because of the restrictions in travel imposed by the COVID-19. The logic of expansion. While postponing the summit to at least the September, Mr. Trump declared that in any case, G7 is very outdated group of countries and no longer properly presented. What's going on in the world? He asked. Rhetorically, why not G10 or G11 instead, with the inclusion of India, South Korea, Australia and possibly Russia? Elaborating this logic, the White House Director of Strategic Communications said the US President wanted to include other countries including the 5 Eyes countries, that is intelligent aliens comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand and United Kingdom and the United States, and to talk about the future of China. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs officially immediately reacted, labeling it as seeking a click targeting China. Chinese objections to expand G7 is no reason for India to stay away from it. If invited to join, India has attended several G7 summits earlier too, as a special invitee or for its outsource or outreach sessions. India's Prime Minister was guest invited to Brienne, France at G7 summit last year, along with other heads of government, that is Australia, Burkina Faso, Chile, Egypt, Rwanda, Senegal, Spain and South Africa. The G7 summit emerged as a restricted club of rich democracies in the early 1970s, the quadrupling of oil prices just after 1973 Arab-Israel war, when members of Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, that is OPEC, imposed an embargo against Canada, Japan, the Netherlands and the United States, shocked the economies. Although the French were spread the embargo, the chill winds of the OPEC nations, the action reverberated around the world. French President Valéry Giscard invited the finance minister of 5 of the most developed members of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the United States, Germany, Japan, Italy and the United Kingdom, for an informal discussion on the global issues. This transformed into the G7 summit as the heads of government from the following year, with the inclusion of Canada, European Commission attending as a non-emergent members last year. On the invite of US President Bill Clinton and British Prime Minister Tony Blair, the G7 became G8 with the Russian Federation joining the club in 1998. This ended with Russia's expulsion from the following of annexation of Crimea in 2014. When constituted, G7 countries accounted for close to the 2/3 of global GDP. According to the 2017 reports of accountancy firm PwC, the world of 2050, they now account for less than a third of global GDP on purchasing power parity, that is PPP basis, and less than a half on a market exchange rates, that is MER basis. Seven largest economies, that is E7 or emerging 7, comprising Brazil, China, Indonesia, Mexico, India, Russia and Turkey, account for the third of a global GDP on purchasing power parity terms and over a quarter of MER basis. India's economy is already third largest in the world in PPP terms, even if the way behind that of the US and China. By 2050, the PwC report predicts 6 of the 7 of the world's best performing economies will be China, India, United States, Indonesia, Brazil and Russia. Two other E7 countries, Mexico and Turkey, also improved their position. The limitations of G7. The success or otherwise multilateral institutions are judged by standard of whether or not they have successfully addressed the core global or regional challenges of the time. The G7 failed to head off the economic downturn of 2007 to 2008, which led to rise of G20 in the short span of existence. The G20 had provided a degree of confidence by promoting open markets and stimulus, preventing a collapse of global financial system. The G7 has not covered itself only with the glory with respect to contemporary issues such as COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, the challenge of Daesh and the crisis of the state collapse in West Asia. It also announced its members would phase out all fossil fuels and subsidies, but has not so far announced any plan of action to do it. The G7 countries account for 59% of historic global CO2 emission from 1850 to 2010, then their coal-fire plants emit twice more than CO2 than those of entire African continent. Three of the G7 countries, France, Germany, UK, were among the top 10 countries contributing volunteers of Daesh, which had been from 22,000 to 30,000 foreign fighters just 2 years ago. West Asia is in a greater state of turmoil than any point of the time since the fall of Ottoman Empire, leading to migrant crisis that persuaded many countries in Europe to renege on their Western liberal values, making Mediterranean Sea as a death trap for the people fleeing against the fear of persecution and their lives. There should be a need for new institution. The world is in a state disorder, the global economy has stalled, and COVID-19 will inevitably create a widespread distress. Nations need dexterity and resilience to cope up with the current flux, as also a revival of multilateralism, for they have been seeking national solutions for the problems that are unresolvable internally. Existing international institutions have proven themselves unequal to these talks. It would be the ideal to include in these 7 future leading economies plus Germany, Japan, UK, France, Mexico, Turkey, South Korea and Australia. If Trump loses his re-election bid, this might have to wait for a few years. The 2005 ad hoc experiment by Prime Minister Tony Blair is bringing together the G7 and BRICS countries as a one-off. A new international mechanism will have to value only on the focus of key global issues. India would vitally interested in these 3: international trade, climatic change and COVID-19 crisis. A related aspect is how to push for observing international law and preventing the retreat from liberal values on which public goods are predicated. Global public health issues and rival of growth and trade is a sustainable way that also reduces the inequality among with the nations would pose a huge challenge. Second order priorities for India would be cross-cutting issues such as counter-terrorism, counter-proliferation, and immediate concern is to ensure the effective implementation of 1975 Biological Weapon Convention and a prevention of any possible cheating by the state parties and the possible creation of new microorganism of virus by using recombinant technologies. On regional issues, establishing a modus of vivendi with Iran would be important to ensure that it does not require nuclear weapons and is able to contribute to peace and stability in Afghanistan, the Gulf and West Asia. The end in Afghanistan would be also an interest to India, as also the reduction of tensions in Korean Peninsula and South China Sea. This article was penned by Jayant Prasad, a former diplomat, served as the Director General of Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. This is regarding an unraveling of Group of Seven. With the world is in disorder, a new mechanism will have to only focus on key global issues. Second article, which focuses upon the migrant laborers looking for a relief. This particular article is regarding keeping the sports clean. A year ago, the story of Gomati Marimuthu spoke about her struggle following the death of her father and a coach in succession. Is the 800-meter gold she won at the Asian Chinese Championship in Doha appeared to have a lot of sparkle. But all that changed when the sports reports emerged a month later about the middle distance runner from Tiruchirappalli testing positive for a banned substance twice, both at Doha and Federation Cup in Patiala, and even prior to Asian Championship. The latest verdict from International Disciplinary Tribunal, which has punished the 31-year-old with probably a career-ending 4-year ban, will also strip her as an Asian gold. It with the popular or probably a career-ending 4-year ban will also strip her of the Asian gold. It should not only come as a surprise for the 4 of her urine samples had a presence of 19 NA, that is nitroglycerone, a metabolic natrolone which is prohibited at all times. However, what remains strange is that in the 2-month span, the delay of National Doping Testing Laboratory, which is now suspended, the World Anti-Doping Agency, the National Anti-Doping Agency, and bring out the results of Gomati samples taken during the Federation Cup. Had it come earlier, she would have not gone to Doha, and it would have saved the country for a lot of embarrassment. Meanwhile, Gomati had claimed innocence and suggested that the steroid may be accidentally imbibed through some non-vegetarian food as she consumed. Sport is beautiful only when clean athletes compete. However, poor on an athlete is a sprint or losses of its charm when a dubious candidate walk away with the goal. It is also unfair to clean athletes and their years of sacrifice. Every time a big fish is caught, it spreads awareness about the perils of taking illegal drugs and goes a small way in cleaning up the sport. The temptations to cheat, especially in India, are many with the government. The temptations to cheat, especially in India, are many with government jobs promotions during this heavy during these COVID-19, with many national champs closing their doors outside, there is a feeling that it will be tough to test athletes, and the next 2 years are crucial with the events such as Olympics, World Champions, Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games lined up. But WADA and NADA have brought out the guidelines for testing during this phase. Sebastian Coe, the president of World Athletics, emphatically said there is monitoring going on all time by major World Athletics emphatically said that there is monitoring going on all time by major national anti-doping agencies, AIA, Athletics and WADA. These days, adding up number of tests is long gone. Intelligent testing and analysis are more important now and however ever been. Clearly, NADA has to do more so that India is not tainted with the drug violations, and Gomati case is the latest wake-up call. This is regarding ugly run on keeping the sports clean. Sport is beautiful only when it is clean and athletes compete in a fair race. This particular article is regarding the transfusion of public health care. A new challenge of India allegedly recently that several private hospitals in the country were exposed by sting operations by levying fees in excess when the COVID-19 patients went to them for care. It's not clear why a sting operation was necessary. The high cost of medical care in the top hospitals of the country is well known. Anyone who had a major surgery or received intensive care in the hospital can testify to it. The debate now is whether such exorbitant rates are justified during the pandemic, such as the one we are in the midst of. Before we address the question, however, the equally important questions: why do we have so many private hospitals in a poor country such as India? We are more likely to have hospital beds in private sector than in public sector. It is estimated that there are 19 lakh hospital beds and 95,000 ICU beds and 48,000 ventilators in India. More of these are concentrated in 7 states: Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Telangana, West Bengal. Except for Tamil Nadu, Delhi and West Bengal, there are far more beds and ventilators in the private sector than the public, according to the Center of Disease Dynamic Economics and Policy. A mirror to public care. The reason for this abundance of private health care is obviously the lack of adequate public health care. This situation has developed due to two main reasons. Since independence, India has quite rightly focused attention on the larger picture. The priority in developing country would be the provision of primary health care and peripheral level preventive measures, immunization, maternity and pediatric care, as well as dealing with the common infections such as tuberculosis. We have done this very well, resulting in imperative improvements in many healthcare indices in the last few decades. However, none enough hospital beds and specialized facilities were provided by the public sector during that time. At this time, the burgeoning middle class and increasing wealth produced an explosion in the demand for a good quality healthcare. Private medicine was quick to capitalize on the demand. The second reason for the dominance of private medicine in India is the lack of adequate investment in public health. The Indian government spends abysmally low of 1.3% of GDP on the public health care, which is woefully inadequate. Allocations have to be at least double to this to address some of our pressing needs. Greater transparency and tighter administration are necessary to ensure that our resources are utilized properly and appropriately. Private medicine in India is by no means uniform. It is estimated that there are more than 1 million unqualified medical practitioners, mostly in the rural areas, Most of them provide a basic healthcare charging a mood set fee. Some of them have claims that expertise in alternate systems of medicine such as Ayurveda and homeopathy. It is not unheard of them that sometimes venture into minor surgery. At the other end of the spectrum are the state-of-art and corporate hospitals that are well equipped and well staffed and which provide excellent service at high cost. These are often set up in the metro cities at a huge cost and have successfully engineered a reverse brain drain of many specialists from pursuing lucrative jobs abroad and staying back to returning India. Between the two extreme and large number of private practitioners and institutions providing a wide range of services of varying quality. Some are run by trusts, charitable organizations and religious missions, often providing excellent quality at a modest cost. This particular thing is a wide range of quality of medical services in India reflects the wide range of income and wealth. The middle class, seeing what is possible, is beginning to demand on similar care at affordable cost. The poorest of 70% are left with vagaries and the mercy of unpredictable public healthcare system and a low cost challenge. What we need to be done is the public sector, the healthcare system desperately needs high government spending. Healthcare cannot be left to private medicine in developing country or indeed a country in any country. The United States, despite spending more than 15% of enormous GDP on the healthcare in the form of largely insurance-based private medicine, has a poor health care in Europe, where government-funded universal health care. The crisis is now the private hospitals and institutions will need to be regulated. Costing and auditing of the care are to be produced. There should be a need of independent bodies. This will not only ensure appropriate care of the right cost but also prevent unreasonable demands of suspicious patients. No hospital, business, institutions or individuals should profiteer from the national calamity such as COVID-19 pandemic. The hospitals, like any other institutions, have social responsibility to provide care in times of need. But one should be also aware of actual costs involved which have to be met. The cost of medical care often falls down the diminishing returns as the treatment goes more sophisticated. Further and further increments, although small, cost enormously more. Some of the drugs used in the care severely ill COVID-19 patients may cost more than 50,000 a shot. For example, many provide only marginally better outcome. Capping costs may necessitate suffering or sacrificing some of their expensive options. Private hospitals should also and will be prepared to forego profits and even suffer losses during the national disaster, but if the losses become unsustainable, they may be forced to lay off the employees. This is very hard benefit for anyone. This is regarding the transformation of public healthcare. There should be a need for health services that cannot be left to private medicine in developing country or indeed any country. The other article is regarding the lack of looking back into the relief. On migrant labor crisis. This is introspection of the lapses that led to migrant labor crisis in order. The worst may be over the country, that is, interstate workers may have returned home, or many of them accommodated in Shamik trains that are scheduled to run, and some, it appears, do not mind staying where they are for the work. Now that the unlock phase has begun in many parts of the country, the Supreme Court had fixed a 15 days deadline for the completion of the process of transporting all of them back to home, besides asking the government across the country to drop criminal cases against them for violating lockdown, since it was imposed a short notice on March 25th. Pursuing the lockdown violation charges would have been court intervention, noting notwithstanding lingering criticism that Supreme Court's intervention on the motion may have come too late, that only sought to seem a relief over the improvement of the situation. Going by the officials' claim by the center, as only 57 lakh migrant workers have returned to their hometowns from the states in which they have been earning and living. Given the scale of the unprecedented misery millions of them found themselves in over the last 2 months, the idea that both authorities and the courts are making an effort to ameliorate their living condition is an undoubted source of comfort and relief. Chastened by the open criticism from the former members of higher judiciary as well as many senior lawyers and jurists, the top court has sought to redeem its status by a series of directions as well as indicating its willingness to go into all pending issues. As a part of its effort, it made all the government file comprehensive affidavits on the action that taken to facilitate the return of workers, provide them with immediate relief and arrangement made for the food and water for them during the train journey. It had also further asked the states to spell out the plans for registering all workers, their skills and their areas of employment and different welfare and employment schemes meant for all of them. Several problems remain, not the least of them being the lapses of the part of authorities across the country in dealing with the crisis, the inadequacy of the facilities for registering and identifying those who visited to travel, the paucity of timely information and effectively communication relating to the movement of trains and their destinations were other issues. Overall, the court's belated intervention has occasioned a moment of much needed introspection for everyone concerned on the responses, attitudes and shortcomings. This is particularly looking back into the relief regarding the migrant labor crisis and the introspection on the lapses that led to migrant labor crisis is in the order. And that's the end of article discussion. Please do subscribe if you are new to my channel. And before I conclude, I request you all to subscribe. And thanks for joining me. Have a great day.